Welcome to Music Forever, a podcast by the New Horizons International Music Association. I am Irene Cohen. Steve Garone is a trumpet player and original member of the Sudbury Valley New Horizons Band in Massachusetts. Steve also plays guitar, bass guitar, and ukulele. He shares how music creates a good balance in his life and how his New Horizons group provides many opportunities to socialize and make new friends. Steve's career has spanned a number of disciplines, including engineering, marketing, and competitive intelligence and market research. Steve joined the NEMA board of directors in 2024, and we met via Zoom in January 2024. Thanks for being here. Welcome to this podcast. Let's hear a little bit about how music got in your life.
Right. Well, it started, I would say, probably around second grade in elementary school. We played these instruments which are called recorders. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have tried those or played those at one point in their life. And I was in a class where the teacher was able to teach a little bit of music on the recorder. And I was kind of hooked right from that point. Not only was I able to play an instrument, which to me was, as that child of that age, was a real, exciting thing to do, but she also was able to teach us on a very elementary level how to actually read music. My next step was a few years later. I had a very close friend. He was a few years older than I was, and he played accordion. And he was encouraging me to try it. And I did. I took lessons for a couple of years. And while, frankly, I wasn't particularly fond of the instrument and I didn't continue with it, it did teach me a lot more about how to appreciate music, how to read music, how to interpret music, a little bit of a theory. I was still a preteen, so there was just so much that I was able to learn at that point. I was progressing along in my journey through music. But the next, I think, big step, though, was in fifth grade. I was in a still elementary school in Brooklyn, New York, and I was lucky enough to land in a music class. My teacher was a music teacher, and the school had instruments. We didn't have to rent them. We had about 6 trumpets. We had like 30 clarinets and a bunch of other instruments. And I chose the trumpet. I just was fascinated by that instrument. I played it for a few weeks. A girl who was playing clarinet was having some issues with her dental work and reed instruments, tried the flute. That didn't work out for her. And unfortunately, I drew the short straw and had to give up my trumpet to her and ended up playing clarinet from that point, fifth grade, through undergraduate school and college. In bands in high school and in a college band. And then I really never touched the clarinet from that point on. I turned into a young teenager. The Beatles were appearing on the scene. Rock groups were all over the place. And I had an uncle who had an old guitar, and I started playing it and was self-taught pretty much throughout my guitar playing career. I did take lessons for a couple of years, but kind of outgrew my teacher a little bit. I thought we were kind of on a different page. So that became an instrument that I became really fond of. And I did play in a couple of bands, unfortunately not rock bands. They were more, somebody had a wedding or a party and we would play there. And I did that for a while. One of the members of that band was the fellow actually who started me on accordion. Since then, I have picked up the banjo, I've picked up the ukulele, and about 14 years ago, my son's middle school teacher, band leader, Diane Moffett, decided to form a New Horizon affiliate band. She called up the parents of students who she taught. I was one of them. And we sat around at an initial meeting, and she asked us, what is your musical story? Why do you want to be here? Why do you want to be in this band? And I told the story I just told you about my fifth grade experience and my trumpet and my clarinet experience. And she looked at me and said, so are you going to take the easy way out and play clarinet, or are you going to play the instrument you really want to play? And I can't pass up a challenge like that. So I became a trumpet player with our New Horizon band and have been doing that for the last, 14 years. The other instrument I picked up along the way was the bass guitar, because we spun off a New Horizons swing band from our concert band and our strings. And I was asked by one of the teachers to switch from guitar, which I was playing with that group, to a bass guitar. So I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And I've added that to my list of instruments. So I've had a pretty varied and long journey through music, but to me, it's as a hobby and as a place where I spend time, really a go-to when I want to relax, I want to unwind, and I want to do something that is both challenging and fun.
Right. Well, you remind me of these people that are out in the street who are playing multiple instruments all at once. I'm sure you've seen them here and there. They pull a leg and a drum goes, and they have banjos and guitars hanging from their necks. The thing that you said here at the end, that you feel that music is your go-to place. Can you explain in which way music creates that balance for you?
Sure. We all have things we do in our life that involve work. In my case, I'm not currently employed, but I do a lot of volunteer work, and things pile up, pressure mounts. You have a lot to do. There are certain times during the day where you just go, I want to just break away and do something I really want to do. Now, I have a number of things I do. I run, I do yoga, but to me, the real breakaway, the real thing that helps me relax and gives me something to do to both stay active, but do it in a way that's fun, is playing music. And I will bounce from instrument to instrument. One day I will say, I really haven't played banjo in a few days. I'm going to do that. Another day I'll go, well, I need some more time on the trumpet because I was challenged by that piece in our New Horizons rehearsal, and I'll do that. I often say, even though I'd spent a lot of time on music, that I don't practice enough. And that's a complaint that virtually every musician says to themselves. But it really is really true in my case. So I would like to be able to spend more time on it. And I probably should be a little bit more focused on a particular instrument for a period of time rather than bouncing around. Right. That's just me. I've been that way all my life in even in work. I like to do a lot of different things.
Right. And when you were still working, if you don't mind me asking,
Sure.
What sort of work did you do?
Well, I had a pretty varied career as well. I started out as an engineer. I have 3 engineering degrees, and I was working in the area of semiconductors. So, everybody who looks at their iPhone sees the kind of work that I did for a number of years, and of course, millions of other people. I then switched into a marketing role, a technical marketing role, but I stayed in the IT industry. I was also an industry analyst. I did competitive intelligence, and I did product marketing for many, many years. I have kind of a keen sense, I think, of how to look at a market and figure out how to address it. And the reason why I mention that is because whenever we've had an opportunity or a situation where we needed to publicize something about our New Horizon band, whether it had been just do publicity by writing a newspaper article or publicizing one of our concerts, I typically was the one in our band to do that.
It's interesting. You have had a fairly technical career, so sort of that left side of the brain. Yet music is housed in the right side of the brain, where creativity is happening. You mentioned balance before. Do you feel in some way that your brain is more balanced because of it? And do you actually feel that a different portion of your brain is at work when you are playing music?
Boy, that's a great question. I don't know that I feel it. Perhaps the difference between doing work in a technical field and playing music creates different types of emotions or feelings, meaning that I find it more relaxing to do music than otherwise. But you brought up you bring up something very interesting that I remember from my past. Those of us who wanted to go to college took SAT exams, and if you recall, there is a verbal part of the SAT exams, and there's a technical part or a mathematical part of the SAT exams. And usually, as an engineering major, most of the fellow students that I was with did extremely well on the math part and not so well on the verbal part. I did pretty well on both of them. So I think I started out somewhat balanced when I went to college, at least. And sometimes it works in your favor and sometimes it works to your detriment. I found that when I was interviewing for positions as a marketer, talking about my technical background, even though I was in a technical field, didn't really do me a lot of good, because marketers think a certain way and engineers think a different way. And a marketing VP might look at somebody who's trained as an engineer and go, we really don't want that kind of person. So sometimes it works in your favor and sometimes it doesn't.
Yes. Yeah, I understand that. Tell us a little bit about your entrance to the Sudbury New Horizons band and how it all started. You were there really from the start, and what role you would have played, if any.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, our band leader called a number of parents of the kids that she had in her bands in our town, which is Wayland, Massachusetts, and she got us together, as people who would be interested in not only helping form the band, but also, actually want to play. And there were I think 10 or 11 of us at the time. She basically said, I want to get this started. I think she learned about it from her brother, who was a conductor in a band in the Midwest, who had seen one of the New Horizons bands. He called her up and said, I think you want to take a look at this. And that got the whole ball rolling. So I was there from the very beginning. I considered myself a beginner because I was starting on trumpet, and we were able to have both a concert band that could play intermediate pieces from the beginning, and kind of a group on the side that for about a semester, and I was in this, were beginners, mixed instruments, being taught by a different teacher. And somewhere around the end of the first semester, we kind of merged in to the big band. Obviously, we were challenged initially, but we hung in there and eventually blended in very well. So that was really our start. And we've been doing it for 14 years. We had a very interesting way of having rehearsals and putting together what we call concerts, but they really weren't, during COVID. We didn't want to disrupt the flow of what we were doing, but we couldn't meet. So we got together on Zoom and we rehearsed on Zoom. Then, to take the place of concerts, we put together videos of specific pieces. And I really admire our instructors, because they didn't know how to do that technically initially, and they learned how and did a really, really good job. And I remember on one of those pieces, I played 2 trumpet parts, a rhythm guitar part, and a bass guitar part. And I wore a different hat in each of the videos. It was really fun. And all these, by the way, are on YouTube. You can watch them. They're really, really fun. But I found that really, really challenging, because whereas you sit in a band of 60 or 7 people And especially when you're first playing a piece, you make a lot of mistakes and you feel okay because nobody really hears you. When you're putting together a video of your part, it's a solo and you want it to be right. I sort of have a bend toward perfectionism. And when one of the instructors would say, if you make a few mistakes, don't worry about it. When we edit and put this together, we'll just drop out those notes. I would not pay attention to that. And I would just want it to be right. I would take 60 or 70 takes before I would get it to where I wanted to be. It was frustrating. If I did it again, I would listen to them.
I remember, you probably remember in our young years, before cassette recorders, there were still the large tape recorders. Yeah. I was taught to learn while recording yourself. And I still do that. It is one of the best ways to give yourself feedback about your playing. In no time do you hear and go, oh, I shouldn't have taken a breath there, or that note was in the wrong pitch, or whatever the case may be. So recording, although I understand recording yourself 60 times to get it perfect is a bit much, in general, it is a great way to practice, even if you do it once or twice. It was actually during COVID that Diane and Linda got in touch with Nima and said, we have these wonderful little videos. Do you want them? And we said yes, because we were sending out little bi-weekly emails to all the New Horizons groups to say, hey, look what others are doing. And the end result of that was, Steve, that directors started to get in touch with each other saying, how do you do that? How do you record? And how do you teach online? And so we offered conductors to get together online to talk to one another. So from one thing came another, and we made the best out of a really rough time. And it allowed new contacts. At that time, Diane also said, I'm prepared to give some lectures online. And she started with her circus talk. That was her first talk that she gave, which until today attracted the highest number of participants. I think over 300 people signed up for that particular one talk on circus music.
I think we have somewhere between 60 and 70 people in the band. We have a strings section as well. And usually in our concerts, what we do is the strings play and then we play and then we merge together on a single piece, which is usually in medley from a Broadway show or something like that. The strings group is a lot smaller, maybe about 20. Mm-hmm. There is a social aspect to it. I've made a lot of friends and a lot of people that I do other things with socially. We have had situations, at least for me, where subgroups have sort of gone off and met at people's houses on a regular basis. I was in a group of most of the trumpeters in our orchestra that would get together every other week and play music that we acquired online. We'd all introduce pieces that we found. It's not just about sitting and playing music. It's about body language. It's about what you do and don't do if you make a mistake. A lot of us had a tendency, I know I did this, I'd hit a wrong note or I'd miss a note, and I'd make a face, like a face, I know you can't see this on the podcast, but it would be like a grimace. And what Diane spent a lot of time telling us, whatever you do, just keep playing and look and project confidence in what you're doing. Our Council on Aging in Wayland, Massachusetts does a series of concerts in the summer with various music groups and singing groups. And we always grab one of those dates, which is usually in July. And we sit out on the lawn outside the town building and we play a concert, and it's really well attended. I mean, tons of people, they bring their chairs, they bring their snacks, whatever they want, and they sit there and listen, and we have a great time. We also play a couple of holiday concerts. Sometimes we play at a local garden center, which has an indoor space that a lot of people come to because it's a very popular place, and we play there. We also play at a church in the center of our town, usually to accompany carolers, and it's usually outdoors, which can be a temperature challenge.
Audience comes there to enjoy themselves. And if you play a wrong note or you drop a drumstick, that's really not what the audience remembers. They remember the total program, the fun they felt while we were playing. So at one point in time, you became aware of the New Horizons International Music Association.
Yeah. As we were forming our band, we were told about the international organization, and I think I joined pretty early on. And especially in recent years, I've noticed a lot of programs that looked really interesting and activities that looked really interesting, and I've joined in on some of them. And it seemed like a really, really interesting organization with a lot of interesting activities that I thought maybe I could contribute to. So when the opportunity came up to apply to be a board member, I said, well, I'm in a space and a time in my life when I am doing these kinds of activities. I've got the time to do it. Let me throw my hat in. And here I am.
And here you are. You are now a brand new board member of NEMA. And from what I understand is that you are on the development committee and the technology committee, which are both areas that you worked in. And for those people who are interested in the future to become a board member or to just help out the board. You don't have to be a director of the board to help us out.
Right.
If you have specific interests or you're really good at something and you say, you know what, I could be of value, let us know, because we also have non-board directors working on our committees because of their expertise in one field or another.
I'm currently maintaining a number of websites and am doing a fair amount of social media work. And I think that's probably where I can make a pretty big contribution. I've also mentioned to a few people that I have a strong interest in events. I think some of the events that this organization works on are really, really interesting and are really, really important in terms of getting people involved in music. And I want to help there as well to the degree that I can. I kind of play recruiter a little bit when it comes to our New Horizons band, and I get a lot of responses that sound like I'm not. I don't. To your point, I don't have a musical bone in my body, or I can't read music, or I've been away from it so long, I don't have any musical talent. All sorts of responses that are kind of negative and sort of push the opportunity away. I want to offer a quote, "Your best is good enough." And I've always taken that to heart, and I think the rest of our band members do as well. I would not be at all intimidated because of any of those reasons that I just mentioned. There are beginner opportunities, there are intermediate opportunities, advanced opportunities, and so on. And there's a place where you can fit in, and nobody judges you. You do the best you can, and you get the most out of it that you can personally. Do not let a fear of music talent or inability to play stand in the way of your getting involved.
Steve, thank you so very much for all you do and for giving this interview and for taking on the task of being a member of the board. Wishing you all the best with that.
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity.
I would like to thank Steve for giving this interview. If you would like to find out more about Steve's New Horizons group, please go to svnhb.org. Music for this podcast by Mary Riddle, Swag On. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Music Forever. If you are interested to be interviewed for this podcast, please email us at nimapodcast@gmail.com. That is NHIMA podcast@gmail.com. See you next time.